Ensign Jisoo Park stepped onto the observation deck of Harmony Station, her eyes drawn to the spectacular view of Earth below. After 3 years of training and countless simulations, she was finally here, humanity's newest diplomatic representative to the Galactic Coalition. Ensign Park, a voice called from behind. Commander Kim requests your presence in Conference Room 3. The Vexarian delegation has arrived early. Jisoo straightened her blue uniform jacket and nodded. On my way. Her heart raced as she made her way through the station's gleaming corridors. The Vexarians were among the most mysterious species in the Coalition, tall, blue-skinned beings from a distant world who rarely ventured beyond their own star system. This first official meeting could set the tone for Earth's relationship with them for decades to come. Outside the conference room, Jisoo paused to collect herself. In her pocket, she felt the small bar of dark chocolate she'd brought as a personal comfort on this stressful day. Her grandmother always said chocolate calmed the nerves. With a deep breath, she pressed the door panel and stepped inside. Commander Kim stood talking with 3 Vexarians. They were taller than humans by at least a foot, with skin that shimmered in shades of blue and violet. Their 4-fingered hands moved gracefully as they spoke. "Ah, Ensign Park," Commander Kim said. "Allow me to introduce Diplomat Juan, Chief Cultural Liaison for the Vexarian Collective." The tallest of the Vexarians turned, fixing Jisoo with eyes that reminded her of opals, swirling with colors that seemed to shift as he looked at her. "It brings warmth to meet you, Ensign Park," Juan said, his translator device converting his musical language into slightly formal English. "We have studied much about Earth. Your world fascinates us." Jisoo bowed slightly. "The honor is mine, Diplomat Juan. We have much to learn from each other." The meeting progressed smoothly as they discussed basic cultural exchange protocols. Jisoo noticed Juan watching her with intense curiosity whenever she spoke. 2 hours in, Commander Kim was called away for an urgent matter, leaving Jisoo alone with the Vexarians. An awkward silence fell over the room. Jisoo remembered her training. In moments of diplomatic uncertainty, small personal gestures often worked better than formal protocol. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her chocolate bar. "Would you like to try something from Earth?" she asked, breaking off a small piece. "This is called chocolate. Many humans enjoy it." The other 2 Vexarians exchanged quick glances, but Juan leaned forward with interest. "You wish to share your food with me?" he asked, his voice carrying an odd tone the translator couldn't quite convey. "Yes," Jisoo smiled. "It's a simple pleasure from my home." Juan's opalescent eyes widened. He reached out with slightly trembling fingers and took the chocolate piece. The room seemed to grow unusually quiet. The other Vexarians stood perfectly still, their attention fixed on this small exchange. "This is most unexpected," Juan said softly. He studied the chocolate for a moment before carefully placing it in his mouth. His expression changed immediately. A look of surprise, then pleasure crossed his features. The shimmering blue tones of his skin seemed to brighten. "The sensation is remarkable," he said. "Complex, like nothing on Vexuria." Jisoo smiled, relieved that her small gesture had been well received. "I'm glad you like it." The meeting concluded shortly after, with plans for further cultural discussions the next day. Jisoo returned to her quarters feeling pleased with how well her first diplomatic encounter had gone. Commander Kim even sent her a message of congratulation on making such a positive impression. The next morning, Jisoo was awakened by an urgent chime at her door. She pulled on her uniform and answered, expecting perhaps a message from Commander Kim. Instead, she found herself facing a delegation of 7 Vexarians, all adorned in elaborate garments with shimmering patterns that caught the light. One stood at their center, holding what appeared to be a crystal container filled with swirling blue liquid. "Ensign Park," he said formally, "we have come to acknowledge your proposal and present the traditional gifts of bonding." Jisoo blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Proposal. An older Vexarian stepped forward. I am Elder Tai, cultural overseer for our delegation. Yesterday, you shared personal nourishment with Diplomat Juan, did you not? The chocolate? Yes, but... And he accepted this offering. Elder Ta continued. On Vexuria, the sharing of personal sustenance is our most sacred gesture, a formal proposal of lifelong partnership. By accepting, Diplomat Juan has signified his willingness to begin the bonding process. Jesu's mouth fell open. A proposal? You mean like marriage? The concept translates imperfectly, Juan said, his voice both formal and somehow shy. But yes, in your terms, you have proposed marriage, and I have accepted. The corridor outside her quarters was beginning to fill with curious onlookers, humans and other alien species watching the elaborate Vexarian delegation with interest. There must be some mistake, Jisoo said quickly. On Earth, sharing food is just a friendly gesture. Elder Tae's expression shifted to one of concern. You were not aware of our customs. This is most troubling. The acceptance of food is a binding first step in our culture. News has already been sent to Vexaria. Jisoo's communicator beeped urgently. Commander Kim's voice came through. Ensign Park, please report to my office immediately with the Vexarian delegation. We have a situation to discuss. 20 minutes later, Jisoo sat stiffly in Commander Kim's office as the commander paced back and forth. Let me understand this correctly, Commander Kim said. By offering Diplomat Juan chocolate, you inadvertently proposed marriage according to Vexarian custom. It appears so, Commander, Jisoo replied, her face burning with embarrassment. Elder Ta spoke up. To break such a proposal after acceptance would be considered a grave insult to not just Diplomat Juan, but to all Vexaria. It could damage relations between our peoples for generations. Commander Kim stopped pacing and looked directly at Jisoo. Ensign, it seems your first diplomatic mission has become significantly more complicated than anticipated. Jisoo looked at Juan, who was watching her with those strange, beautiful eyes. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Embarrassment, certainly, but also curiosity and perhaps a touch of hope. What happens now? She asked quietly. Jisoo sat across from Commander Kim, struggling to process what she was hearing. You want me to maintain this engagement? She asked, her voice rising slightly. Commander Kim nodded solemnly. Just temporarily. The Coalition Advisory Board is very clear on this. We cannot risk a diplomatic incident with the Vexarians. Earth just gained full membership status 3 months ago. But it was just chocolate. Jisoo protested. To us, yes. To them, it was a sacred proposal. Commander Kim slid a tablet across the desk. The Vexarian Council has already sent formal congratulations. Their ambassador to the coalition called it an unexpected but welcome bridge between our cultures. Jisoo buried her face in her hands. How long is temporarily? A few weeks. Just until we can arrange a culturally appropriate way to dissolve the arrangement. Commander Kim's expression softened. Think of it as an immersive cultural exchange. Juan seems quite understanding about the mistake. Later that day, Jisoo met Juan in the station's arboretum, a neutral space suggested by the cultural affairs officer. The Vexarian stood near a small earth pine tree, studying it with fascination. The variations in green are quite beautiful, he said as she approached. On Vexaria, most plant life has blue or purple pigmentation. Jisoo cleared her throat. Diplomat Juan, about our situation. Juan turned, his opal eyes catching the light. Please, when we are not in formal settings, just Juan is preferred. And yes, Elder Ta explained the misunderstanding. I'm sorry for putting you in this position, Jisoo said. I had no idea about your customs. The fault is partly mine, Juan admitted. I should have clarified before accepting your offering, but I was surprised by your gesture. Food-sharing proposals are typically preceded by months of formal courtship. Jisoo blinked. You thought I was being incredibly forward. A ripple of color passed across Juan's blue skin. She would later learn this was the Vexarian equivalent of a blush. "I thought you were being refreshingly direct," he said. "It is not uncommon for diplomats to form bonds. Many believe it strengthens relations between worlds." Jisoo couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. "Well, my directness has certainly created an interesting diplomatic situation." Over the next few days, Jisoo found herself spending scheduled time with Juan, learning about Vexarian customs, while station personnel whispered behind their backs. Some humans found the situation amusing. Others worried about implications for Earth's standing. "Why is food sharing so significant to your people?" Jisoo asked one evening as they shared a table in the station's dining facility, closely watched by both human and Vexarian officials. Juan considered the question. Long ago, Vexaria experienced a time of great scarcity. Food was precious, and sharing it meant putting another's needs above your own survival. It became the ultimate expression of trust and commitment. He hesitated, then added, "There is also the matter of our biology. Vexarians form mild telepathic connections with those they are bonded to. Food sharing initiates this process." Jisoo nearly choked on her drink. "Telepathic? You can read my thoughts." "No, no," Juan quickly clarified. "Nothing so invasive. It is more. An awareness of emotions, especially strong ones. Safety, distress, joy. It helps bonded pairs protect and support each other. And this happens automatically when you share food." Jisoo asked, fascinated despite her embarrassment. "The connection forms gradually," Juan explained. "It requires proximity and mutual openness. That is why I was so startled when you offered the chocolate. Such connections between different species are extremely rare, but not impossible according to our oldest records." Their conversation was interrupted when a group of Drenthi diplomats entered the dining hall. The reptilian aliens paused, their yellow eyes fixing on Jisoo and Juan with obvious disapproval. The ambitious human and her Vexarian prize, one Drenthi remarked loudly enough for nearby translator devices to pick up. "How convenient that Earth gains a personal connection to Vexaria, just as resource treaties are being negotiated." Jisoo felt her face grow hot. "What are they implying?" Juan's expression darkened. "The Drenthi Republic has been trying to secure exclusive trading rights with Vexaria for decades. They see our situation as a political maneuver." The next morning, Jisoo discovered the Drenthi perspective had spread. Her personal messages were filled with questions from Earth journalists, and even her parents had called, confused about reports that their daughter had married an alien for political advantage. "This is getting out of hand," she told Commander Kim. "Now everyone thinks I'm some kind of manipulative diplomat using marriage for Earth's benefit." "That's exactly why we need to handle this carefully," Commander Kim replied. Breaking off the engagement improperly could seem to confirm those suspicions. That evening, Jisoo found Juan waiting outside her quarters, looking troubled. "May I speak with you privately?" he asked. Inside, he revealed that the Vexarian Council was facing similar pressures. "Some believe I was manipulated. Others think I acted impulsively. Few understand it was simply a cultural misunderstanding." Jisoo sighed. What a mess from one piece of chocolate. "There is something else," Juan said hesitantly. "The connection. It may have begun forming despite the circumstances." "What? How?" "Yesterday, when the Drenthi insulted you, I felt your emotions, a flash of anger and embarrassment. It was brief but unmistakable." Jisoo stared at him. "That's impossible. We're different species. Our ancient texts speak of bonds that transcended species, but such accounts were considered legends." Juan's opal eyes studied her face. "Would you permit an experiment?" At her cautious nod, he placed his four-fingered hand near hers on the table, not touching. "Close your eyes and focus on a single, strong emotion," he instructed. Jisoo closed her eyes, thinking of her grandmother who had passed away last year. The deep sadness washed through her. Juan gasped softly. "Grief," he whispered. Loss of someone beloved. Jisoo's eyes flew open. How did you know that? The connection has indeed begun, Juan said, looking both troubled and fascinated. This changes matters considerably. Before they could discuss further, Jisoo's communicator beeped with an urgent message. The Drenthi had formally requested an emergency coalition meeting to discuss inappropriate human influence on Vexarian diplomacy. They're using our mistake to try to damage Earth's standing, Jisoo realized. Juan nodded grimly. And possibly to prevent any genuine alliance between our worlds. As they looked at each other, Jisoo realized their accidental engagement had become something far more complicated than a simple cultural misunderstanding. Whatever happened next would affect not just them, but potentially the future relationship between their entire species. Jisoo checked her uniform in the mirror one last time before heading to the emergency coalition meeting. 3 weeks had passed since the chocolate incident, and the situation had only grown more complicated. The Drenthi delegation had been relentless in their campaign against what they called human manipulation of sacred Vexarian customs. As she walked through the station corridors, Jisoo noticed station personnel giving her curious looks. Her accidental engagement to Juan had become the favorite topic of gossip on Harmony Station. The coalition meeting chamber was already crowded when she arrived. Representatives from 12 species sat in a circular arrangement, with the Drenthi ambassador Kel positioned directly across from Earth's section. Juan and Elder Tai sat in the Vexarian delegation area, their blue skin standing out among the diverse gathering. This meeting will come to order, announced Director Mun, the Korean-born administrator who oversaw coalition operations on the station. Ambassador Kel has requested this session to address concerns about human-Vexarian relations. Kel arose, his scaled skin gleaming under the lights. Esteemed colleagues, we gather today because of a troubling development. A junior human diplomat has manipulated Vexarian bonding customs to create an artificial alliance. We believe this represents Earth's attempt to gain unfair advantage in upcoming resource negotiations. Jisoo clenched her fists under the table as Kel continued his accusations. When he finally finished, Elder Ta stood to speak for the Vexarians. The Drenthi concerns are noted but misplaced, the elder said calmly. The initial food sharing was indeed a cultural misunderstanding, which both parties have acknowledged. However, the Vexarian Council sees no evidence of deliberate manipulation. The meeting continued for 2 hours, with various representatives weighing in. Jisoo was relieved when Director Mun finally concluded that no formal action was warranted, though he encouraged continued transparency regarding the unusual situation. As the delegates filed out, Juan approached Jisoo. Would you join me for the cultural exhibition this evening? It might help demonstrate that our interaction is diplomatic rather than controversial. Jisoo agreed, and that evening they attended the exhibition showcasing art from various coalition worlds. They were viewing Earth's display when the station's alarms suddenly blared. Emergency protocol activated, announced the station's computer. Life support systems compromised in sections 7 through 10. All personnel evacuate to designated safety zones. Jisoo's communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Commander Kim. Vexarian delegation quarters in Section 8. Several delegates trapped. Without hesitation, Jisoo turned to Juan. Your people are in danger. They raced through increasingly smoky corridors toward Section 8. Emergency lights flashed as the ventilation systems struggled to clear the air. Life support failing, warned the computer voice. Oxygen levels decreasing in affected sections. When they reached the Vexarian quarters, they found the entrance partially blocked by fallen ceiling panels. Through the gap, Jisoo could see several Vexarians inside, some appearing disoriented from the rapidly thinning air. The emergency oxygen masks won't work for them, Juan said urgently. Vexarian respiratory systems are incompatible with human emergency equipment. Jisoo assessed the situation quickly. I can fit through that gap. I'll help them out while you guide them to the emergency shuttles. The air inside is becoming toxic, Juan warned. I'll be quick, Jisoo promised, already squeezing through the opening. Inside, the air was filled with a strange-smelling gas. Jisoo moved quickly, helping 4 disoriented Vexarians to the exit where Juan waited. Her lungs began to burn as she searched for any others. In a side chamber, she found an elderly Vexarian cultural attaché struggling to breathe. Jisoo lifted the frail alien and staggered toward the exit, her vision beginning to blur from the toxic atmosphere. Almost there, she gasped, pushing forward as her strength began to fail. Just as she reached the doorway, Jisoo felt her consciousness slipping. The last thing she remembered was Juan's arms reaching for her and the cultural attaché. Jisoo woke in the medical bay, oxygen mask over her face. Commander Kim stood nearby, looking both relieved and concerned. "You took a serious risk, Ensign," the commander said, removing the mask as Jisoo's vitals stabilized. "But you saved 5 Vexarian lives today. The council has sent formal commendations." "What happened to the station?" Jisoo asked, her throat raw. "Sabotage," Commander Kim replied grimly. "Someone deliberately introduced a toxic compound into the life support systems just before the diplomatic reception. Security is investigating." A movement at the door caught Jisoo's attention. Juan entered, his usually blue skin looking paler than normal. "I will return later," Commander Kim said, nodding to Juan before leaving them alone. Juan approached Jisoo's bed, his opal eyes intense. "You risked your life for my people." "It was my duty," Jisoo said simply. "I felt it," Juan said quietly. "When you were inside, struggling to breathe, I felt your pain, your determination. The connection between us has grown stronger than I believed possible." Jisoo remembered something strange from her rescue attempt. "I knew exactly where to find the cultural attaché. I had never been in those quarters before, but somehow I knew which chamber to check." Juan nodded slowly. "Our connection is becoming reciprocal. This is unprecedented between different species." That night, after being released from medical, Jisoo dreamed vividly of a world she had never seen. Crystal spires rising into a purple sky, twin moons casting blue shadows across strange landscapes. She woke speaking words in a language she didn't recognize. The next morning, she met Juan in a secure conference room at Commander Kim's request. The commander's expression was grave. "The sabotage investigation has revealed troubling information," Commander Kim explained. "The toxic compound was specifically harmful to Vexarian biology, and security footage shows a Drenthi maintenance worker accessing the systems shortly before the incident. They targeted the Vexarians deliberately," Jisoo said, shocked. Juan's expression darkened. "The Drenthi have opposed Vexarian-human cooperation from the beginning. This attack occurred during a gathering where our delegations would be socializing." "There's more," Commander Kim added. "We found this in a data burst sent from a Drenthi vessel before the attack." He displayed a message on the room's main screen. "The Boeing D Moost NOTB ALO2ED2 Strange The PROP HCY and NO2B Huilfeld." Jisoo looked at Juan questioningly. "There is something I haven't fully explained," Juan said slowly. "In our oldest records, there are passages about rare bonds between Vexarians and other sentient species. These bonds were said to create unique abilities, enhanced telepathic connections that could eventually extend beyond just emotional awareness." "What kind of abilities?" Jisoo asked. "Shared thoughts, knowledge transfer, even coordinated actions across distances," Juan explained. "The ancient texts call these star bonds, and prophecy that such connections would bring great change to the galaxy." Commander Kim looked concerned. "Are you suggesting the Drenthi attacked because of some ancient prophecy about your accidental engagement to Ensign Park?" "The Drenthi are deeply superstitious," Juan replied. "And they have always feared Vexarian telepathic abilities. If they believe our bond could enhance those abilities." Jisoo remembered her dream of Vexaria, a world she had never seen. Last night I dreamed of your homeworld. I saw cities with crystal towers, and I woke speaking words I don't know. Juan's eyes widened. You're receiving images from my mind. This confirms what I suspected. Our connection is developing far beyond a typical Vexarian bond. Commander Kim looked between them. This has gone beyond a simple cultural misunderstanding. If the Drenthi are willing to commit sabotage over this, we have a serious security situation. As if confirming his words, the station's communication system chimed with an incoming message from Earth Central Command. All human-Vexarian interaction was to be limited until further notice, pending investigation of the diplomatic incident. They're trying to separate us, Jisoo realized. Yes, Juan agreed, because they fear what we might become together. The tension on Harmony Station grew thicker by the day. Earth Central Command had established strict protocols limiting contact between humans and Vexarians. Jisoo found herself under constant surveillance, with security officers discreetly following her throughout the station. This is getting ridiculous, she complained to Commander Kim during their daily briefing. I can't even eat in the common areas without someone watching me. Commander Kim's expression remained neutral, but Jisoo noticed the worry lines deepening around his eyes. The situation has escalated beyond our control. The Drenthi delegation has formally accused Earth of attempting to establish a telepathic foothold in coalition affairs. That's absurd, Jisoo protested. Perhaps, but they've convinced 4 other species to support their position. There's talk of suspending Earth's membership until the matter is resolved. Jisoo felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Earth had worked for decades to join the Galactic Coalition. Suspension would be devastating for human advancement and security. What about the sabotage investigation? Surely that proves the Drenthi are the ones acting in bad faith. Commander Kim sighed. The evidence was inconclusive. The Drenthi ambassador claimed the maintenance worker was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Later that day, Jisoo received an encrypted message on her personal device. It contained only a location and time. Observation Deck 7, 2 o'clock. Despite the risk, Jisoo slipped out of her quarters during the station's night cycle. The corridors were dimly lit, with only occasional security patrols to avoid. She made her way to the rarely used observation deck, heart pounding. Juan was already there, his blue skin almost luminous in the starlight. Beside him stood Elder Ta. We must speak quickly, Elder Ta said without preamble. The Drenthi have called for an emergency coalition vote tomorrow. They're demanding that Earth withdraw from the coalition for a minimum of 5 standard years. What? They can't do that, Jisoo exclaimed. They've gained enough support to force the vote, Juan explained. Several species fear the implications of human-Vexarian bonds. Jisoo struggled to understand. All this because of a misunderstanding over chocolate. Elder Tae's expression became grave. No, young human. This goes much deeper. We've discovered the Drenthi have been planning to isolate Earth for years. Your accidental bond with Juan simply accelerated their timeline. But why? Jisoo asked. Because humans are uniquely compatible with Vexarians, Juan explained. Our research since your rescue of our delegates confirms it. The telepathic connection we've developed would normally take Vexarians years to establish, yet it formed between us in weeks. Elder Ta nodded. The ancient prophecies speak of minds divided by stars united in purpose. The Drenthi have long feared these prophecies, as they speak of a shift in power throughout the galaxy. Jisoo felt overwhelmed. So a piece of chocolate might fulfill some ancient prophecy and reshape galactic politics. It sounds absurd when stated that way, Juan admitted, a ripple of color passing across his skin in what Jisoo now recognized as amusement. But the Drenthi take such matters very seriously. As they spoke, Jisoo suddenly felt a sharp spike of alarm that wasn't her own. Juan tensed at the same moment. Security approaching, he whispered. Without conscious thought, Jisoo moved toward the maintenance access panel that Juan was thinking about. Their synchronized movement happened so naturally that only afterward did she realize they had communicated without words. They slipped through the panel just as the security team entered the observation deck. Elder Ta had vanished separately through another exit. "The connection is getting stronger," Juan said as they made their way through the maintenance tunnels. "I could see your thoughts about the security patrol before they arrived." "This is what the Drenthi fear, isn't it?" Jisoo realized. "Not just our political alliance, but what our telepathic bond represents." Juan nodded. "If humans and Vexarians can form such connections, it would fundamentally alter coalition power dynamics. The Drenthi have built their influence on secrets and manipulation. Telepathic bonds would make such tactics far less effective." They parted ways at a junction, agreeing to meet again before the emergency vote. As Jisoo returned to her quarters, she found a message waiting from Earth's ambassador. "Report to embassy level. 8 o'clock. Urgent directive." The next morning, Jisoo stood at attention before Ambassador Du, a stern woman who had spent 30 years in diplomatic service. "Ensign Park, you've created quite a predicament," the ambassador said, studying Jisoo carefully. "Earth Central Command has been discussing how to handle this situation. Ma'am, I believe the Drenthi are using my mistake to push their own agenda against Earth." Jisoo started to explain. Ambassador Du held up her hand. "We are aware of the larger political implications. However, the simplest solution remains the most obvious. You must formally break your engagement with Diplomat Juan." Jisoo felt a sudden coldness. "Break the engagement?" "Yes. We've consulted with moderate Vexarian officials who have outlined an acceptable ceremony to dissolve the bond without causing offense. It will take place immediately after today's coalition vote." "But Ambassador, our research suggests—" "This is not a request, Ensign," Ambassador Du interrupted. "This is a direct order. Earth cannot risk its position in the coalition over one diplomatic misunderstanding." Jisoo left the embassy in a daze. As she walked, she felt Juan's concern touching her mind before she even saw him waiting in an alcove ahead. "They've ordered you to break our bond," he said quietly. "It wasn't a question." Jisoo nodded. "After today's vote?" Juan looked troubled. "My government has suggested the same. Elder Ta is fighting the directive, but many believe appeasing the Drenthi is the safest course." "What will happen to our connection if we go through with the ceremony?" Jisoo asked. "Unknown. No human Vexarian bond has ever been documented, much less dissolved." Juan hesitated. "There is something else you should know. I've been researching the ancient texts about interspecies bonds. They all speak of such connections as destiny-altering events that cannot be broken by simple ceremony." The station-wide announcement system interrupted their conversation. "All coalition delegates report to Grand Chamber for emergency session. 15 minutes until proceedings begin." Jisoo and Juan exchanged worried glances as they turned to leave. Juan suddenly reached for her hand, his 4 fingers gently closing around her 5. "Whatever happens in that chamber, know that I would never have chosen to break what has grown between us," he said solemnly. "On Vexaria, we believe some connections transcend circumstance. They are written in the stars themselves." Jisoo felt his sincerity flow through their bond, along with something deeper she wasn't ready to name. "It started with chocolate," she said with a sad smile. "But it's become something much more important, hasn't it?" The Grand Chamber was filled to capacity when they arrived. Delegates from all 27 coalition species were present, an unprecedented gathering outside the annual summit. Ambassador Kell of the Drenthi stood at the central podium, his yellow eyes gleaming with triumph as he prepared to call for Earth's suspension. Jisoo took her seat in the human section, while Juan joined the Vexarian delegation across the chamber. Despite the physical distance, she felt his presence in her mind, a reassuring connection amid the crisis. As Ambassador Kell began speaking, Jisoo realized that much more than her accidental engagement was at stake. The future relationship between humans and the galaxy hung in the balance, all because she had shared a piece of chocolate with a blue-skinned alien who now shared her thoughts. The grand chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Kell concluded his speech. The Drenthi representative had painted a frightening picture of humans using Vexarian customs to gain telepathic advantages in coalition politics. We therefore move that Earth's membership be suspended for 5 standard years, Kell announced, his scaled tail twitching with barely contained satisfaction. During this time, all human Vexarian interactions should be strictly monitored. Jisoo glanced across the chamber at Juan. Though they sat far apart, their connection allowed her to feel his calm determination. Surprisingly, she felt no fear from him, only resolve. Director Mun, overseeing the proceedings, spoke next. Before we vote on this serious matter, representatives from both Earth and Vexaria may present their responses. Ambassador Du stood for Earth, her expression carefully controlled. The coalition was founded on principles of cultural exchange and mutual respect. What happened between Ensign Park and Diplomat Juan was a simple misunderstanding, not a plot. Earth has agreed to dissolve this accidental bond through proper Vexarian customs immediately after this session. Jisoo felt her heart sink. The decision had been made without her input. She looked down at her hands, trying to control her emotions, knowing Juan would feel her distress. Elder Ta rose for the Vexarian delegation. The ancient blue-skinned diplomat moved slowly to the central podium. For 10,000 years, Vexarians have valued truth above all else, Elder Ta began. Our telepathic abilities make deception difficult among our kind. So I will speak truth now. He paused, his opal eyes scanning the chamber. The Drenthi claims are based not on fact, but on fear of a prophecy older than the coalition itself. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Ambassador Kell hissed in displeasure. What the Drenthi truly fear is not human manipulation, but the natural compatibility between our species. Elder Ta continued. The connection between Ensign Park and Diplomat Juan has indeed grown beyond typical bonds. This morning, our scientists confirmed what the ancient texts predicted. Their bond represents a rare evolutionary convergence. Jisoo straightened in her seat. This was new information, even to her. Irrelevant mysticism, Kell shouted. We are discussing political manipulation, not outdated prophecies. Then perhaps we should discuss the real manipulation, came a new voice. Jisoo turned to see Commander Kim standing, holding a data tablet. With Director Mun's permission, I wish to present evidence discovered 1 hour ago. Director Mun nodded. Proceed. Commander Kim activated the chamber's main display. Our investigation into the life support sabotage has uncovered encrypted communications between the Drenthi delegation and their home government dating back 2 years before Earth joined the coalition. The display showed translated message fragments. Humans must be isolated before vxarin take t abilis hed. Ge niti I keep analysis, suopnifirms suopnpi threat. Prepare opposition to Earth manmbrshap. Shocked exclamations filled the chamber as Commander Kim continued. The Drenthi have been planning to block human integration into galactic society since they discovered our potential compatibility with Vexarians. The sabotage was meant to drag our species apart and discredit humans. Ambassador Kell's scales darkened with rage. These are fabrications. The human-Vexarian bond threatens all species. Their combined telepathic abilities would give them unnatural advantages in negotiations and security matters. Is that your concern, Ambassador? Jisoo found herself standing, speaking without authorization. Or are you afraid of what happens when secrets can no longer be hidden? The chamber fell silent. Jisoo felt Ambassador Du's glare, but she continued, drawing courage from Juan's supportive presence in her mind. What began as a cultural misunderstanding has revealed something important, Jisoo said. Not a weapon or a threat, but a possibility that different species can connect deeply, sharing understanding across the stars. She felt Juan rise across the chamber, his thoughts aligning with hers. The Vexarian word for what we've experienced is Calathi, minds bridging space. Juan added, "Our ancient texts don't speak of this as conquest or advantage, but as healing for a divided galaxy." Director Munn studied them both. "Are you refusing to dissolve your bond as your governments have arranged?" Jisoo took a deep breath. "I will not break something that could help build true understanding between our worlds." Ambassador Du stood, her expression thunderous. "Ensign Park, you are defying direct orders." "With respect, Ambassador, I am following the higher purpose of my mission, to build genuine connections with other species." Jisoo looked around the chamber. "The Drenthi want you to fear what Juan and I represent. But ask yourselves, isn't understanding across differences what the Coalition claims to value most?" Elder Ta moved to stand beside Jisoo, his ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "For too long, we have built this coalition on careful distance and diplomatic language. Perhaps it is time for deeper truth between us." The chamber erupted in debate. Species that had remained neutral began questioning the Drenthi motives. Others expressed concern about telepathic bonds, but acknowledged the evidence of Drenthi manipulation. After 3 hours of heated discussion, Director Munn called for the vote. Jisoo and Juan stood together, their hands almost touching, as the results appeared on the central display. Suspension of Earth. 7 in favor, 18 opposed, 2 abstaining. Investigation of Drenthi interference. 22 in favor, 3 opposed, 2 abstaining. Relief flooded through Jisoo, echoed by Juan's joy in her mind. Earth would remain in the coalition. In the days that followed, both Earth and Vexaria withdrew their demands for Jisoo and Juan to break their bond. Instead, scientists and cultural experts from both worlds began studying their connection, learning how it had formed and what it might mean. 6 months later, Jisoo stood beside Juan in the newly established human Vexarian Cultural Embassy on Harmony Station. The ceremony about to begin was neither human nor Vexarian, but something new, a cosmic companionship ritual, acknowledging their unique bond while defining it on their own terms. "Nervous?" Juan asked through their now fluent mental connection. "A little," Jisoo admitted. "I never expected to be making diplomatic history because of chocolate." Representatives from 25 coalition species filled the embassy's main hall. Even some Drenthi were present, though Ambassador Kell had been recalled after the investigation revealed his role in the sabotage plot. Director Munn presided over the ceremony. "Today we witness not just a connection between 2 individuals, but a new possibility for understanding between worlds. Jisoo Park and Juan have chosen to formalize their unique bond not as marriage in either of their traditions, but as cosmic companions, a new designation created to honor their unprecedented connection." Jisoo and Juan exchanged the symbolic gifts they had chosen. She gave him earth chocolate sealed in crystal, while he presented her with a small vial of shimmering blue liquid from Vexaria's sacred pools. "With these offerings, we acknowledge that understanding begins with sharing." They spoke together, their voices harmonizing as their thoughts aligned. The gathered diplomats applauded as Director Munn announced the formation of the Interspecies Connection Initiative, a new coalition program inspired by Jisoo and Juan's bond. Already, 3 other species pairs had discovered compatible mental connections, though none as strong as the human-Vexarian bond. That evening, Jisoo and Juan stood together at the same observation deck where they had once hidden from security. "Did you ever imagine one small misunderstanding would change galactic history?" Jisoo asked, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath the station. Juan's blue fingers intertwined with her pink ones. "There is an old Vexarian saying, the greatest journeys begin with a single step taken in the wrong direction." Jisoo smiled. "On Earth, we say something similar. The best surprises come when you least expect them." Through their bond, they shared the same thought, that perhaps their accidental connection had never been an accident at all, but rather the first step toward a more deeply connected galaxy, where understanding could flow as easily between worlds as it now did between their linked minds. And to think, Jisoo said softly, it all started with chocolate.